Hey, good evening and welcome. I'm Dr. Dan Elash, and I'm talking to you as part of a Living Free Together program. We're calling this Using Conflict to Build Relationships. Why share this? Well, there are a few reasons for sharing these ideas currently. Living Free Together is an organization of people who are fallible, who make mistakes, who are sometimes insensitive or thoughtless. In short, we're a collection of typical human beings. During all of the social disruption of the COVID era, I'm finding more people having more opportunities for getting frustrated with each other. Even how much time we spend together, both as husband and wife or spouses, or particularly as families with a wide range of kids and ages and agendas and needs all trying to coexist at the same time in a confined space, can make it tough. We're going to have conflict. And as a psychologist, I can tell you the conflict isn't a problem. Conflict is an opportunity. Let's talk about that a little further down. But the purpose of our coming together in Living Free is to build trusting relationships so that we can mutually benefit each other by offering support, by sharing experiences, and by getting through life's stresses a little better by doing it together than when we're walking through life alone. If we accept that these 2 points are true, then it follows that at one time or another, you were all going to do something that ticks off or offends someone in our circle of friends or in our family. It's predictable and it's normal. Conflict then is a natural byproduct of intimacy. By being close, by living together, we're going to have occasional places where we bump into each other, where we disappoint each other, where we offend each other. Conflict's not bad. It's unresolved conflict that creates problems. If we hold grudges, then we close off lines of communication and familiarity that are necessary to build and maintain trust. Giving your partner the silent treatment, not speaking for an evening or a day or a week on end, is punishing. It's hurtful, but it does absolutely nothing to maintain trust and to build caring between the two of you, whether it's parent and child, coach and student, mother and father, husband and wife. It's all the same. If we just try to endure these frustrations with each other, resentments build. Therefore, if we learn how to use normally occurring conflicts as opportunities to build trust and to diffuse frustrations with the people we care about, then we're staying true to our commitments with each other. There's 3 primary buckets when you want to talk about conflict. The first is conflict with an enemy. And this really taps into the lizard brain in human beings. They call it the lizard brain because it's the part of the brain itself that is shared by all creatures down to and including lizards. It's the fight or flight. It's the fundamental eat, sleep, reproduce. It's the basic biological drives. And when we think about conflict with an enemy, we're really talking about pure limbic anger. You want to kill. The goal is to hurt, to diminish, to wound, to destroy, to damage. Excuse me. And when that's your reaction, it's appropriate when in a life or death situation, when dealing with serious life-altering consequences. Not so much when you're arguing over whether or not dinner was cooked well or to your liking, or whether you watched a TV show you wanted to watch. Fighting with an enemy means fighting to hurt or destroy. The second kind of conflict that we face is competition. Competition is where somebody wins and somebody loses, or somebody wins and lots of people lose. The goal is we have rules, we're going to play within them, and that somebody's going to get what they want and somebody else is going to lose. Now, think of this in the context of asymmetrical warfare, when you have uneven power. Whenever somebody wins all the time, when somebody has all the resources, the other side tends to fight outside of the rules. They operate in ways that give them some advantage, some hope to win. In marriage, in family life, if I can't win no matter what I do, then we're not going to have a close, a caring, a comfortable relationship with each other. The friendship is not going to last. The constant competition. Which brings us then to the third type of conflict, and that's what I call intimate conflict. The goal of intimate conflict isn't to hurt or destroy. It isn't to win or be right. The goal of intimate conflict is to resolve the problem. By intimate conflict, I really mean conflict with a person you want to keep relating to when the argument is over. When the crisis is past, we want to stay together. We want to stay in relationship to each other. We want to be closer now that we've removed this irritant than before we addressed it. The goal of intimate conflict is to resolve the problem. And when we face conflict as friends, as collaborators, as people with mutual purpose and value, looking to remove an irritant, to resolve a misunderstanding, or to recalibrate the way we treat each other, we actually strengthen the relationship. We become more trustworthy in the eyes of the other person. We become more caring in the eyes of the other person. It means not being self-serving, but of serving the relationship, the marriage, the family, the relationships you want to continue to grow in terms of caring, trust, and intimacy. So, if we choose to pull away or write people off, we fracture our social units in such a way that it diminishes our core purpose for coming together in the first place. We can be hurtful. We can abuse our power that our loved ones have given us to value them, to comment on them, to criticize on them. You know, there's an old country western song that is a real song. And the title was, I'm going to paraphrase it, how can I kiss the lips at night that have been chewing my butt all day? Whether you're a kid and a parent, or a husband and a wife, a spouse and a loved one, that kind of hurt, that kind of criticism, that kind of nagging weakens the bonds, weakens the trust, makes it more difficult to go forward gladly with each other. than avoiding those situations by handling our conflict more maturely and more effectively. So how do you do that? Constructive conflict resolution really means following the steps we're going to talk about now. When you're upset with someone or something in your key relationship, how will you have the best chance of resolving it, of minimizing it? You may not come up with the perfect solution today, but if the problem is complex and you fix 20% of it this time, 30% of it the next time, you have knocked off half the complex problem that you haven't been able to solve. The other thing is that any recurrent problem you have with a child, with a partner, with a spouse, with a colleague, is nature's way of telling you, dude, you need to fix your strategy, you need to do something different, because people solve every problem they know how to solve. If they don't solve it, if it becomes recurrent, you need to adjust your strategy. You need to adjust your tactics. So that's what we're going to talk about. Gather your thoughts before you go off. Take the time to answer the following questions. Just what is it that you're so mad about? Have you ever made a similar mistake, been thoughtless or insensitive or misunderstood situation? Generally, when we're reacting to someone in anger or in frustration, we're operating off of a lot of assumptions. Do you know if they're accurate? How do you know if what you're assuming is accurate? Are you accurately hearing what they're saying? Are they saying accurately what they mean? Are their intentions matching their impact? Taking a moment to sort that out, to ask yourself that, to ask your partner that question, those questions allows you to clear up some misunderstandings. Some research has shown that over half of the conflicts that married couples have come from mishearing, misunderstanding what the other person's saying. Taking a moment to clear that up can really diminish the amount of fighting, the amount of conflict, the amount of hurt feelings that you wind up carrying in relation to your spouse, to your partner, to your kids, to your parents. Next, ask yourself, what do you want to accomplish by addressing the situation? What's your purpose for this conversation? All this is consideration before you engage. That's why it takes a moment. That's why it takes some self-control or some self-discipline. Take some time to think it through. What's your purpose? Is your purpose to maintain the relationship? Is it to improve the relationship? Is it to damage or end the relationship? Because how you choose to act will affect those outcomes. Which one do you want to create? And are you acting in ways, are you planning to act in ways that will get you there? How do you plan to treat the other person in order to achieve the outcome you want in your ongoing relationship? Second, I want you to set the stage for a positive conversation. Be thoughtful about how you approach the other person, as opposed to just vomiting your feelings out in the middle of whatever situation you're in. Ambushing the other person. Dumping on them when they're unsuspecting or unprepared. Rather, what I'd like you to do is go to a quiet place. Interact respectfully. Just because you think differently or have a different opinion from the other person doesn't make that person wrong. doesn't make everyone else wrong. Most of the things that people fight about are not right or wrong. We're not talking about murder, suicide, abortion. What we're talking about is preference, taste, style, timing. Those things are way more negotiable and don't necessarily carry a right or wrong answer. It's not black or white. There's room for compromise and negotiation. So, when trying to set the stage for a productive conversation about a difference or conflict, start off with a simple I statement. Tell the other person how you experienced what they did. That's different from saying, you know, you were so hateful, you were so stupid, you were so... That's talking about what they did. If you want to start off positively, start off by saying how you experienced what they did. They can argue with it. I wasn't hateful. I was not cruel. I was not insensitive. It can become, yes, you were. No, I wasn't. Yes. But if I say I felt rebuffed, I felt rejected, I felt ridiculed, I felt disrespected when you did what you did, it's much harder for people to argue with the fact that you're saying what you felt, what you experienced. Ask the other person for their perception of the same event. If I felt disrespected, what did you mean? Did you mean to be disrespectful? If not, how do you explain your behavior that left me feeling disrespected? You're listening, you're asking questions, and you're listening to understand what the other person was thinking and feeling. You're not listening to gather evidence so that you're going to jump on what they say, or while they're talking, you're thinking about what you're going to say back. You're listening to understand so you can both see the situation that happened between you from a common perspective. Listening to each other's points of view is respectful, it's loving, it's friendly, it's being on the same side as opposed to being adversaries. It builds and nurtures relationships rather than strains them. Agree to a common goal for the conversation. It's really, what's the outcome you'd like to have? How do we create a win-win, if possible? What do I want you to do or say that would make me feel whole, make me feel better? Talking that through, agreeing to a mutually beneficial outcome really creates the ground for an improved relationship. I watch couples all the time who act like they're going to a court of law, and if they just present enough evidence, then somebody's going to make a decision that says, husband, you're right, or wife, you're right. That doesn't happen in life. It doesn't happen in marriage. Fighting about who's right or wrong doesn't get us many places productively. Looking at what do we want to accomplish, how do we want to be treated, how do we want to treat each other, those have answers. Those allow us to engage, to treat each other differently, and to be more allies, friends, and partners than adversaries. The next, number 3, is to stay issue focused. Keep the conversation on task. I have a son. When he was a child, go figure, he's a lawyer now. But when he was growing up, if I could talk to him about coming in late from a curfew. Within 3 minutes, we were talking about my failure as a father and how unfair I was and how the other boys didn't have the same. We could get distracted in a minute and never get to the point we were trying to address in the first place. And finally, one day, it dawned on me what was happening. And I said, you know what? If you're having a problem with my skill as a parent, we can have a different conversation about that at a different time. Right now, this conversation is mine, and I want to talk to you about missing your curfew. Keep it one issue at a time. And many married couples, when you feel like you're losing a point, throw in some other element. Oh, well, yeah, well, your mother never, or you always do that, or you call those kitchen sink fights. When you throw in anything but the kitchen sink, trying to keep an advantage or to win, rather than to solve the issue. So again, we want to keep issue focused. We want to take one issue at a time. We want to resolve one thing before we tackle some other kind of problem. Talk about behavior, not about the character of each other. Oh, you're such a jerk, is different than saying, when you said that, I was really offended, or I didn't understand where that was coming from. I'm talking about your behavior, which is what was offensive, not you as a human being, as my partner, as my loved one, that is somehow not worthy or not good. Excuse me. When we talk about behavior, people are less defensive. When I talk about your worth as a human being, the caliber of your character, the weight of your soul, there's a lot more opportunity to get defensive, to become aggressive, to defend ourselves, rather than focusing on solving the problem that originally precipitated the conversation. Excuse me. Be careful. As I said about hateful words earlier, don't dehumanize, don't ridicule, don't disrespect the other person because you're angry. You can be angry without demeaning someone else. You can be hurt without having to diminish someone else. Because like I said earlier, the anger, the hurt can fade, but when you've disrespected, when you've demeaned, when you've ridiculed the other person, sometimes those words never fade. Those scars never heal. I will not be vulnerable with you again if that's how you treat my vulnerabilities. I will not be open and honest and caring with you if you're going to throw it up in my face when you're mad at me. And I will build a wall. And we'll put bricks in the wall between us with each conflict that we have. Pretty soon, there's no door. The entrance, the pathway to each other has been blocked by all the unfinished business. So treat each other with respect. The goal is to solve the problem, not to destroy the enemy. Another tool, another skill is to take radical responsibility. The only person whose behavior you can control is yours. So, you can start off an argument by saying, I don't like the way this is going. I don't like the way we're handling X, Y, and Z. I don't like how I was treated. Here's how I'm going to behave differently in the future to make it different. We're going to change the pattern. We're going to change the script. We're going to change the formula. I can do something differently than I did. And that's my contribution to solving this conflict. What are you willing to do from your side to solve the conflict? What are you willing to do to meet me part way? How do we cooperatively tackle this issue that's between us in such a way that we wind up liking each other, feeling better about each other because we've had this conversation, because we've dealt with this issue, than we would have if we hadn't handled this conversation the way that we did. At that point, the issue then becomes, what is the other person willing to do to improve the situation, to reduce the conflict, to minimize the hurt? And that allows people who care about each other to talk through those tactics, those issues, those behaviors with each other in a way that can be positive and constructive, as opposed to hateful and vindictive. Another piece of advice is really the next step is to stay future focused. Take one issue at a time. Keep the KISS rule. Keep it simple, stupid. Don't go back to what happened in the past. It only complicates things. It fractures our focus. It lowers the likelihood of a constructive resolution. You know, I see people who are angry with each other, who feel like, I'm not willing to trust my kid, I'm not willing to trust my partner, I'm not willing to trust my colleague. I don't find them worthy of trust. Then start with that issue rather than the symptom that you're dealing with right now. You know, if you're not going to trust each other, don't be together. If you're not going to trust each other, go be a shepherd, a lighthouse keeper, but don't try to be in relationship with each other. On the other hand, if you're going to be in relation, you have to expect sometimes to have your feelings hurt. Sometimes you have to work at it. I tell people all the time in counseling that one of the obligations you have as a married person is to be lovable sometimes. Not just to indulge yourself, but to act in ways that are best for the relationship, that are best for the family. You don't go back by refocusing on old hurts or old wounds. Deal with what's happening today and move forward. Forgive the past. Ask for forgiveness. Do what you need to do to gain forgiveness. And if you have offered forgiveness, then let it go. Don't revisit it. If you call on old issues that still linger, make an appointment to talk about those in a different conversation later. It can be next, solutions only lie in the future. What we'll do going forward, what we'll do in the next minute or tomorrow or next time. And the more we're aware of that, of what we're promising to do going forward, the more we can keep our focus on maintaining the relationship at a place that's really good and productive. It's all about what you're going to do, not what you did. Nothing in the past can be changed except our interpretation of it. We might explain it away, we might justify it, we might clarify it, but we don't change it. The issue is really, what will we do going forward? Think of it as an after-action review. What do we need to do more of going forward? What do we need to do less of in the future? Or what new or different behavior do we need to commit to when the situation arises in the future? Forgiveness liberates you in the present. Wounds heal if you let them. There's an old saying that's attributed to Buddha. Holding on to anger is like swallowing poison and waiting for the other person to die. Same goes for hate, hurt, or feelings of humiliation. The more you hold on to those resentfully, the more you hold a grudge, the more damage you do to the relationship. The less you're investing in it, the more you're pulling out of it. And it's like any other structure. The more support you remove, the more goodwill, the more grace that you take out of the equation, the more fragile the relationship. So if you're going to be hateful, if you're going to punish, if you don't want to live with the other person, own it, deal with it, step up to it. But if that's not your purpose, if your purpose is to maintain your relationship, but make it better, make it more supportive, make it more loving, then act in a mature way to tend the relationship going forward. And that's the next step here. How do we tend the relationship going forward? One of the ways is to act in ways that build trust. You know, we'll see that sometimes we're talking about negotiation and getting people into trust-building activities. What do you want? What would be helpful for you in dealing with your spouse, dealing with your kids? What allows us to build trust in each other? How can I count on it to be productive? Okay. So you engage in those acts of goodwill. You engage in acts of repairing any hurt that you might have caused. You build the relationship by taking responsibility for yourself. A lot of times when we're embarrassed about what we've done or we're unhappy with what we've done, we tend to blame the other person. Well, if you hadn't done this, I wouldn't have done that. It's childish. It's immature. You control your own behavior, no matter what the other person does or doesn't do. Own it. Deal with it. Take responsibility for it. Promise to do better going forward. That is, if you intend to keep the relationship growing, thriving, keep the partnership, keep the affection and the caring about each other. Really requires tending relationships. When we're courting, when we're dating, when kids are babies, we tend to be loving, we give the benefit of the doubt, we have lots of patience, lots of goodwill. Over time, however, we start to take the good things about the other person for granted, and we focus on what we're unhappy with, what's frustrating. And when that happens, we stop doing the things that build the relationship, that build the love, and we focus on what's wrong. If that's where we put our focus, we will weaken the relationship, we will damage it, we will resent the other person. If we focus on what's wrong with an eye toward how do we make it better, or what's maybe not wrong, but what's uncomfortable for me, what do I not like, what would I like to have different, then we have a path forward. We have a place where the conversation can go, where we can look at how do we care for each other, how do we demonstrate support, a commitment to value, to honor our relationship, to keep it healthy and strong. If we do those things, we can actually use conflict, bones of contention, challenges and issues to strengthen our relationships with each other, to build our love and caring. So I want to thank you for bearing with me through this, attending to it. I wish you good luck and urge you to practice what we've talked about. Knowing these steps isn't going to make the change. It's the practice that will make the change. We'll address more issues of this type in other programs for Living Free Together. Thank you for your participation tonight, and I look forward to talking to you next time. Thank you.